Okay. Hi, everyone. I'll be introducing our speaker for this session, Dr. Martha J. Annenberg Professor of Natural Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania, where she serves as the director for the Center for Neuroscience and Society and leads the Graduate Certificate in Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience, the SCAN program. Dr. Farah is a cognitive neuroscientist who works on problems at the interface of neuroscience and society. She has degrees in metallurgy and philosophy from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a doctorate in experimental psychology from Harvard University. Dr. Farah also serves as a board member of the International Neuroethics Society. So just a brief about what the session is going to be about. So some questions that we have: how will the field of neuroscience develop in the coming decades, and how will it shape life beyond the lab? None of us can know the answers to these questions now, but as young neuroscientists, you will witness these developments and help guide them. In this talk, Dr. Farah will encourage you to think about neuroscience in historical context and look ahead to ways the field may present new opportunities and challenges for individuals and societies. Over to you, Dr. Farah. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you, Anchara. It's an honor to be here, and I was thrilled to learn about your organization, and I'm definitely going to pass on information about it to other people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So my title has a little bit of a dystopian overtone to it. It makes you think of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which involved, terrible oppression of people using various biological manipulations. And I do not want to suggest that neuroscience is going to take us there. In fact, I think you could say, the evil influence in Brave New World is not the science, it's the people in power using the science. But I do want to get you thinking about how neuroscience will change our lives. And particularly because, well, obviously everybody on this call, on this Zoom session, is interested in neuroscience. You're typically young people either planning to go into neuroscience as a career or planning to at least stay in touch and see, continue to learn what's happening. And so you are the people who need to be thinking hardest about these issues of how neuroscience will develop and how it will be used by society broadly construed, right? I mean, society is everything from elected governments or non-elected, as the case may be, to teacher training, right? Like what are teachers taught and how do they approach teaching and their students, and labor law and human resource managers, right? These are all part of our society and they affect our lives. And increasingly, they're looking toward neuroscience for guidance. Okay, so with that as a prologue, bottom line here, I'm not saying it's going to be grim. I'm just saying these scientific breakthroughs have implications for society. Let's think together about them. Let me start with a little historical note about science and society more generally. Why can I not? Whoa. For some reason, I am not able to advance my slides. That's very weird. I'm trying the arrows, I'm trying the return, I'm trying the space bar and the mouse click.
Maybe try exiting out of full screen and then trying again.
Okay, yes, I will do that. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, let's see if this works. So, some history. No, it's not working. Okay, I apologize because some of the, some of the suspense is going to be lost here. Obviously, you can already see where this is going, but that's fine. Let me just make the picture. Damn. I can't even, my computer is really not doing what it should. Because now okay, but I
You may
want
need to
more.
zoom out slightly more. Maybe it'll let you move the speaker notes in that case.
If I what?
You might need to zoom out a little bit more, and it might let you move things around.
I can't grab this,
Oh, no.
you know, the edge of the comments field. Ugh, very annoying.
It's just
This
one
is
of
just
those
so
tech
darn
days.
strange. This is so darn strange. I mean, I've taught like, you know, every week with Zoom and screen sharing. I do not understand what's going on here, but let me, you know what, I apologize to everybody for this slow start. I do want to try one more thing, because if we could get this working, it would be great. Okay, I want to do setup show. Yeah, this, I think I had it wrong. Here we go. Okay. It works. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Some history as context for thinking about the future of neuroscience and society. Oh, damn you. It's again. Oh, there we go. Okay. So what was the biggest scientific breakthrough, most significant growth in science in the early 20th century? I would say it's atomic and nuclear physics. And that led to some very good things for humanity, like, you know, power that does not generate carbon and the atmosphere, and, you know, as they used to say, energy too cheap to meter. But then, of course, the very same scientific foundations can also be applied to weapons, and nuclear bombs remain a major influence on life today. They're hanging over all of us. They shape our you know, diplomatic policy or international policy. Every nation in the world has to be aware of who's got the nukes, who might use them, etc. Okay, here's another major scientific, I don't want to say breakthrough, set of breakthroughs, movement in the mid and late 20th century, and that is molecular biology. This was revolutionary, and the idea of being able to, you know, engineer the genome was, put all kinds of great stuff in our hands. Okay, there we go. We're not going to pay attention to that, but we will pay attention to this. Who knows what this is showing us? Put it in the chat if you are so inclined. Golden rice, yes. Okay, not just rice, but golden rice. Golden rice is a genetically engineered form of rice that is golden because of its high vitamin A content. Now, vitamin A deficiency is worldwide a huge cause of blindness and even death. And if I had been able to bring up my notes page too, I would have been able to tell you how many, people per year, how many children per year go blind, die, etc. But it's a huge problem. And by giving these societies that mainly subsist on rice, golden rice to farm, they can protect people from these terrible health problems. But of course, there are some less, applications that I think arguably we can be less sanguine about. For example, designer babies. Now, it is the case that no one is genetically engineering human babies, human embryos. I guess there was some renegade guy somewhere who tried to make them immune to HIV or something. I don't remember the whole story, but it was a kind of a show-offy project. There are other ways to protect such children. But what is a likely outcome, and may actually be happening now, is people using pre-implantation genetic testing to decide after their IVF which of the embryos they want implanted. Because molecular genetics, for people who haven't been keeping up, has really made quite impressive progress towards being able to predict certain human traits that we care about, using a polygenic score, using a big, long polynomial of weighted values of, each SNP. Now, when I say it's doing really well, sort of best case scenario, they predict 20% of the variance, but that's not bad, If you were an expecting parent and could nudge the likelihood of the kid having some trait that you value by that amount, assuming no downside, you would go for it. So, so this is certainly impacting reproduction, human reproduction, in ways that, you can imagine all of the inequalities, et cetera, and maybe the unintended consequences. But let me also show you that, we're so aware in this era of pandemics of the terrible threat of, illness, contagious illness, and the possibility of engineering pathogens to be worse than the ones we've got circulating now, to be fatal, or worse, if that even makes sense. This is possible using, it's in principle possible using methods like CRISPR. It's even conceivable that you can engineer something such that the people releasing the pathogen actually have something that will protect them, but everybody else will die a horrible death. And in 2016, when CRISPR was, just coming into the public imagination, the director of national intelligence listed genetically engineered pathogens as one of the chief threats facing the United States and obviously the whole world. So, thank you, molecular biology and CRISPR. These are things that have good effects and bad effects. Okay. So that's the context that I'm going to give you. You know, these were physics in the early 20th century, fabulous revolution in our understanding of the physical world and our ability to do things with the physical world. Later on in the century, molecular genetics, again, same for good and bad. What's the next big scientific revolution, if you want to call it that, the next big set of developments in a science that will transform our understanding and enable powerful new ways of getting things done? I mean, I'm looking around at the different fields today and the progress they're making, and I may be biased, and I assume you share my biases, but I mean, neuroscience clearly is undergoing dramatic progress and gaining the ability to change our lives. How did it do that? Here's a, you know, in a nutshell, brain imaging. And, you know, we are so far beyond brain imaging, like here's a blob in the left inferior frontal gyrus. We now have much more sophisticated analyses, and with new computational tools, big, you know, data analysis techniques, there's more and more we can do to predict and classify human brains and minds. Again, we can harness this to genetics as well. We have ways of stimulating the brain. This opens up a whole new, you know, set of handles, if you will, for manipulating the brain. Until recently, it's been psychopharmacology. It's been getting those molecules across the blood-brain barrier and trying to change what we want to change, whether it's therapy or, you know, therapy for psychiatric disease, neurological disease, or something else. You know, brain surgery has also been in the picture, you know, for some decades, a century. Obviously, there's, you know, Egyptian papyruses that report, you know, trepanation, putting a hole in somebody's head, but not, those are little tiny outlier data points. We are, you know, we have had neurosurgery, but really the way that neurosurgery has advanced by leaps and bounds lately is by stimulation. So it's operating to implant electronic gadgetry, electrodes to you know, alter brain function in some way that is desired. So that really leads us to the next topic, which is brain-machine interfaces, which you know, covers a wide territory and is a very exciting, fast-growing area. So brain imaging, you know what, this picture, what is this picture designed to do in this talk? It's designed to remind you just how many kinds of analyses we can do with brain imaging, that this is blobology here, and I don't want to bash it. We've learned a lot of interesting things from blobology. This illustrates functional connectivity. This is probably also functional connectivity, possibly structural. I think it's functional. And then this is a beautiful DTI image. They are also beautiful, mapping the structural pattern of connections. So clearly we are beyond blobs. Brain stimulation, one of the really interesting developments is non-invasive brain stimulation. This young man is getting set up to receive transcranial magnetic stimulation. We don't need a brain surgeon there. We just are, from the outside of his head, projecting a powerful magnetic field, a powerful and focused magnetic field into his brain through the skull, etc. And if you remember your high school physics, that magnetic fields induce a potential field, the voltage change. And you remember that neurons are operating, are doing their action potentials or not, based on voltage gradients. So this is a way, without scratching the surface of the scalp, of in a fairly focal way, accessing the brain and changing its function. Here we have an X-ray showing implanted electrodes in somebody's head. This is, I assume, for treating a movement disorder, but it's also used for treating psychiatric disorders. And finally, who knows what this is? Somebody write it in the chat. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. It is not EEG. You might think it's some kind of optical imaging, where they shine light through the skull. Didn't mention that. It's also kind of an interesting technique, but this is optogenetics, and truly one of the big breakthroughs. It lets you genetically engineer neurons to respond to particular wavelengths of light. You can even engineer them to do one thing with, one color and another thing with a different color light. So far, it is found mainly in animals for research purposes, but people are talking and thinking seriously about ways of implementing this with human beings. It has specificity both to location and to neurochemical system that could make it very, very promising. Okay, so you can do some of this brain stimulation in the comfort of your own home. This is none of the methods that I just reviewed. This is in the same family. It's called transcranial current stimulation. And basically it runs, it has, 2 electrodes. I guess hers is here and here. They go to essentially a battery, and your head connects the circuit. It completes the circuit and you get current running through it. And some people think it's very helpful. Quite a striking shortage of effectiveness studies, but my colleague Anna Wexler at Penn in bioethics has done a lot of interesting work on this kind of do-it-yourself at home brain stimulation, and on the labyrinth of FDA regulations, which the bottom line is the FDA doesn't regulate these things, but for interestingly complicated reasons. There are also brain-machine interfaces from the commonplace, like who knows what this is? Somebody chatted for me. Whoops, hold on. Chat, come on. Do you know what she's donning? She has a cochlear implant And it basically has two parts. It has a microphone to pick up the ambient sound, and a transmitter to transmit it to the cochlear implant, which gives the signal to her auditory nerve. So why does somebody have this? Because they're deaf. I guess I should have mentioned that. But it is a sort of a very interesting new take on the hearing aid. It's not just amplifying sound and giving it to the same damaged system of your body. It is stepping around the damaged part. Now, this is pretty commonplace now. And again, if I was able to read my notes, I could give you some good facts and figures, but I will tell you on the order of 200,000 people in the US have cochlear implants. They are essentially bionic. And there's a lovely book by Michael Korist called Rebuilt, How Becoming Part Machine Made Me More Human. And it's his story of getting a cochlear implant. You know, deafness can be very isolating. And he thought a lot about the cochlear implant before he got it, after he got it. And oh yes, thank you for posting that. Okay, so, and of course they're used all over the world with accordingly larger numbers of people having them. Requires surgery. You're implanting something into the central nervous system, the auditory nerve, and it works well enough that that there's a growing market. Now, of course, there's sorry, my cousins. Let me silence that. And let me go back here. So obviously, there's more far out ideas about brain-machine interfaces, including Elon Musk, who founded a company called Neuralink, and is hard at work, or his people are, figuring out how to sort of thread many electrodes through a brain. I'm not on top of this. I think it is currently just animal models that they're using, but the idea is, that looks like a human brain he's got in the background there, right? The idea is that it could be used with humans. So that's just another sample of the kinds of spin-offs of our understanding of the brain coming from neuroscience that are now affecting us and seem like they're poised to have even more of an effect. Okay, so now, oh, come on. Why? Whoops. Oh, okay. So now I am coming to the part of this talk where I hope we can get some discussion going. And let's see. In fact, we can go by chat. Some of these issues are a little hard to put in a one sentence, tiny chat window. So maybe we could have some people put their hands up and talk. But basically, the question is, and again, the question that you all, as tomorrow's neuroscientists, and tomorrow's, maybe you're not going to be neuroscientists, but tomorrow's citizens who know enough about neuroscience and have thought enough about it, that they will be members of the discussions, policy discussions, and so forth. What can we do with neuroscience now and in the not too distant future? What could we do, I guess, in the more distant future? And what should we do? Because just because you can do it doesn't mean it's the right thing. So some of the, very general buckets that people put the ethical issues into are enhancement. So, pretty much everybody is in favor of, healing the sick and injured. But what about taking a perfectly normal, healthy human being and making them, quote, better than normal? This is not a foreign concept, at least not to those of us in this country, who grew up with or have friends that grew up with, all kinds of, private lessons and enrichment activities and all this kind of stuff. Maybe there's something we can do to the brain that will make you better than normal. I want to mention here disenhancement. This comes up mainly in the in connection with criminal justice. So, obviously, one thing we do with criminals, with people who've been found guilty of crimes, is we incarcerate them. And we are basically limiting their freedom as punishment to them, and also as a way of protecting, the rest of society. But what if there were a drug or an implant that would reduce, I could call it an enhancement that would make them a better person, make their behavior more pro-social, or would disenhance them by limiting their ability to do what, without the intervention, they would want to do. There are, you could believe that you could sort of see some things already as precedents for that. Sexual predators are sometimes given a treatment which is considered therapeutic justice, that consists of anti-androgen medication to decrease their sex drive. And obviously testosterone also affects this organ, right? It's not just further down. And what kind of a violation of somebody's rights is that? Is it justified given that people might be safer? Obviously, locking somebody up is a violation of their rights. So, yeah, interesting questions. And it's not a simple treatment. It has side effects, some of them quite bad. There are countries that do surgical castration, but all of these can be viewed as interventions on the brain that interfere with the person's normal inclinations. Prediction. A lot of, again, criminology and a lot of proceedings in the justice system are aimed at predicting who is going to re-offend. You can imagine getting to the point where we would not wait for them to do one bad thing. If our prediction was really good, maybe it would be acceptable to predict who's going to offend in the first place. My colleague Adrian Rain at Penn has, moderate predictive power. of antisocial behavior as adults from testing he did at age 3, looking at autonomic nervous activity. So I'm not saying any of these things would be good, right? And I'm guessing you don't think they're good, but they're part of the collection of things we could consider doing, and there may be more refined versions. Okay. Prediction of criminal behavior, prediction of learning ability, prediction of job performance. I mean, these are things that we already have non-neuro methods to do, including just, standardized tests and so forth. But, could maybe neuroscience shed new light, give us new capabilities here? And then there's also, every conspiracy theorist's, favorite worry, which is mind reading, and clearly we're not going to be able to read your intentions with the kind of precision, nuance that a spoken English, spoken language gives. But, there may be ways to find out certain things, right? I mean, I'll direct you to this literature. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. A lot of the impressive stuff has been done by somebody at Berkeley. I wonder if anybody wants to chat me. Jack Gallant at Berkeley. And of course, as we get better at doing this, we'll be able to read more information. These are all different, as I say, sort of bins of concern, where in all cases you can see some really good applications that would make us better off, and some really bad applications and or side effects that would be very bad. So now I want to invite you to think about how these kinds of advances could transform. Well, there's the list. And maybe since we were just talking about law and criminal justice, we could start at the bottom. And I am now going to ask if, let's see, can I see? I'm having trouble seeing very many people, but Inchara or Chinmai, can you look and see if there are hands up?
I don't see any at the moment. Everyone, please feel free to raise your hands if you'd like to pitch in, or if you'd prefer typing in the chat, that's perfectly fine as well.
Okay, well, here's somebody who wrote in the chat. Can we help students with ADHD learn faster and retain? Okay, that is a good question. Rates of ADHD diagnosis are quite high. Again, I can't give you an exact statistic, but conservatively 10% of school children, my guess is much more than that. It's a little bit of a wastebasket category, with people who have trouble sitting still, paying attention, etc., for all kinds of reasons, often being diagnosed with ADHD. Stimulants help some people to some degree. What I mean by stimulants, like Adderall or Ritalin. But there is some evidence that those stimulants lose their effectiveness over time as people take them for years. And yeah, it's a real problem. And in fact, sort of going back to law and criminal justice, I mean, some bad, antisocial actions that people commit are clearly caused in part by their ADHD. If they had better executive function, more able to control themselves. So the world would be safer from wrongdoers, as well as these patients would get a better education. I also need to say that, for young people, their social relations suffer terribly from ADHD. I mean, that's probably as bad a problem as their schoolwork. The other kids don't like them. They call out of turn. Your other kid is playing with some toy, no inhibitory control. The person just grabs it. That does not make you popular on the playground. And that is that has a very damaging effect to kids' social self-concept and so forth growing up. So I do want to say big unmet need. Okay, now, could neuroscience help? In principle, it could. In practice, I have to say, I have not heard of anything that seems like it's going to be a game changer. I will also say, because there is such an unmet need here, the parents of these kids, the kids grown up, they're desperate for something that will help them. And that unfortunately leaves them very vulnerable to snake oil claims. So there are these clinics that do neurofeedback, which is, EEG based, but you're just trying to give the kid control over. Oh, and somebody is just contributing something interesting here. So, EEG based neurofeedback, but also brain stimulation, typically using non-invasive for sure, and typically using, electrodes running currents through selected parts of the brain with, selected direct current, alternating, random, etc. Do these work? It would be nice to know. We don't. The reason we don't actually has another interesting societal connection. Good big clinical trials are extremely expensive to run. The pharmaceutical companies spend $500,000, trialing some drugs. Now, these brainstem methods, it's I suppose you can maybe patent a certain stimulation protocol. Actually, my colleague Anna Wexler would have the definitive answer to that, but I think at the moment she is hiking in France, the lucky dog. There's not a lot of money to be made because you can't get rich off the intellectual property. And so who's going to pay for these really expensive trials to find out if it works or not? Be nice if, NIMH or NINDS paid, but so far doesn't look like it's happening. So that's a long answer to the question, is there something helpful for ADHD going to come out of this? Okay, now I see a hand up.
Can I ask
There we
you for
go.
the question?
Yes, hi.
Um, Hello, Farah. So I have a question, which is like I'm in neurophysiology undergrad, right? Like currently in my third semester.
Mhm.
So my major highlights is like EEG, EMGs, nerve conduction studies, sleep studies, and evoke potentials, right? So what do you see the potential of research and further implications of brain stimulations and these interferences, which we talked about for this last like 40-50 minutes? What do you think there is a research potential, or even for the commercial purposes? Because is it going to increase, or like what do you think it's going to be there for like 5 to 10 years out from this day?
Okay, well, let me just get my crystal ball out here. No, just kidding. I mean, I really don't want to give anybody the impression that, I have some special knowledge here. I will say that, in my opinion, EEG and ERP have been they've been dissed. They don't get any respect in the research community. They're obviously very important in clinical work, but and it's partly that community's own fault. I mean, they got obsessed with, oh, the P300, what does that do? And like they spent decades essentially studying the method. Like, okay, if the P300 can tell you something about substantive questions about how the brain works, then great, let's use it. But then they got sidetracked into just, well, what is the P300? What variables influence it? Where is it generated from? Okay, so it was not a very exciting area as a research area. And then, of course, fMRI came along, and that seemed much better localization, especially for deep structures. But my personal opinion is that we can do some interesting things with EEG and ERPs. And yeah, I would like to see the neuroscientists of tomorrow look into that method and ask themselves, do I have questions about how the brain works, or how the mind works, or how some illness could be ameliorated, that EEG and ERP are good for? There's a lot of things they're not good for, but there will definitely be some things they are good for. Exquisite timing resolution, for example. So that's really all I can say. I hope they do have a little renaissance. They are clearly very important for clinical work, for diagnosis, for intraoperative monitoring, that sort of thing. Yeah. Shall I look in the, oh, I also don't want to run over here. Inchara, should I wind it up at like 5 minutes of, so there's a break?
Yeah, I think we can take a couple more questions that may have come through in the chat.
Okay, let me do that, and let me try to be concise.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, anyway, any of us could get involved with it and learn more. Why, yes. The Center for Neuroscience and Society at Penn is, very focused on these issues. And if you surf on over to our website, Center for Neuroscience and Society, Penn, you'll see some stuff. Obviously, if you're not in Philadelphia, that's not as much help, although we do have some video lectures and so forth. The International Neuroethics Society is an international group of neuroscientists, ethicists, lawyers, many other professions who share an interest in these ethical, legal, and societal implications of neuroscience. They have inexpensive student memberships and an annual meeting, which is very interesting. This year it'll be in Montreal, if anybody likes Canada, in October. Should be beautiful then, still not too cold. And then, yeah, I just think surfing around. You know, here's advice. Set up a Google alert for yourself for Neuroscience and Society and for neuroethics. And Google will shoot you an email, I don't know, a couple of times a week, whatever, showing you links to things online that have those words in them. And, you know, a lot of it is just clutter you get rid of, but some of it is interesting. And I will also say that the Dana Foundation, which is a private foundation based, I think, in New York, has a long history of supporting neuroscience and has recently shifted its focus to neuroscience and society. And they have an excellent website that has links to, you know, articles, lectures, etc., that you can read. Okay, what time is it? I'll do one more quick question. Oh, Carolyn. Okay, let's hear Carolyn.
Yes, Dr. Farah, hello, thanks for answering my question. And yeah, I enjoyed totally your speech, but as well, I was thinking maybe you could enlighten us a bit more in how we can improve the way people, for example, with Alzheimer's disease, live and cope with challenges like in a daily basis during the course of their disease, maybe in the early stages. But I'm also interested in what kind of more accessible methods we could use to generate initiatives that maybe would benefit more people in societies like mine, for example, in Peru, where neuroscience is not yet an innovative resource to use to improve daily life, right?
Oh boy, well, two fantastic questions. And I wish I had more, you know, wise answers to give you. Alzheimer's is a terrible, terrible problem. And, you know, there are some drugs, they're not very good. Aduhelm, this most recently approved drug, is if not snake oil, close to it, I think. The studies have not been supportive, and it's, you know, sinfully expensive. And so, yeah, we don't, I wish we knew some way to get at it. There's been people exploring deep brain stimulation. It doesn't look like anything great has come out yet. And yeah, it is tragic. As far as getting involved in neuroscience in countries that don't have a lot of scientific infrastructure, was that the second question?
Yes, Doctor.
That is a great question. And I'm kind of kicking myself that I haven't looked into that and don't know. Yeah, forgive me. I really am ignorant, and that is bad. I'm wondering if the Society for Neuroscience, which is an international society, might have useful information there. There are many different committees that they have. And yeah, I wish I had more to say, but you know about the Society for Neuroscience, right? It's abbreviated kind of like simply neuroscience, but it's not SN, it's SFN. Yeah, you can find all kinds of good information there. Hopefully something about what you asked. So I thank you very much, everybody. This was, I am so pleased to know about this organization. And I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farah. That was a really informative session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All righty, I'll let you all go now.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for participating in that really lovely, vivid discussion. It was really great to hear your thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here for this session.